I truly believe we create our own situations because you're making the decision on who you hire, what clients you have, what your strategy is going to be. So we create our issues. We decide if we want to take a risk. And so, I always felt like if I created the situation, then I have what it takes to overcome it.
Welcome to the Women on the Move podcast. I'm your host, Sam Saperstein. In this episode, I'm speaking with Cheryl McKissack Daniel, President and CEO of McKissack & McKissack, the oldest minority and woman-owned professional design and construction firm in the nation. With over 30 years of experience, Cheryl has led numerous high-profile projects in the commercial, healthcare, education, and transportation sectors. Her leadership ensures that diversity is a key component in every phase of project implementation, and her dedication to humanitarian initiatives and promoting a diverse America has earned her the title of Hero of Liberty, along with numerous other accolades. In today's episode, we'll delve into Cheryl's journey, her leadership philosophy, and her vision for the future of the construction industry. Let's welcome Cheryl now. Cheryl, welcome to the Women on the Move podcast. It's so nice to have you on.
Thank you so much, Sam. I'm so excited to be here.
You come from a rich family legacy in the construction business. You're the CEO of McKissack & McKissack, the oldest women and minority-led construction and design firm in the country. There's so many places to go with this conversation. I really can't wait to hear all about it. Can you tell us about the company itself? Tell us about how your family started this company more than 100 years ago.
Yes, it is quite a legacy. And, I always feel excited that people want to know about our history. The first descendant of our family came to the United States as a slave in 1790. Moses McKissack I. He was taught the trade of making bricks. And his son, Moses McKissack II, was a master carpenter. He moved from North Carolina to Pulaski, Tennessee.
Okay, wow.
Which started our roots in the state of Tennessee. He was known for his spiral staircases and gingerbread finishes on major homes in the Tennessee area. But most notably, he worked for the Maxwell House Hotel when it was constructed. And that's in right downtown Nashville. 5 U.S. presidents stayed there. Franklin D. Roosevelt, that's where he coined the frame, good to the last drop, Maxwell House coffee.
Really historical, right?
Yes, a lot of history there. Moses McKissack III, obviously the son of Moses McKissack II, he too was a master builder. He and his brother Calvin McKissack incorporated McKissack & McKissack in 1905.
Wow. So that's where you trace the origin of the business.
The origin of the business is right there. And they were architects and builders.
Okay.
So they would design their own documents and then build. Architectural licensing laws for the state of Tennessee did not go into effect until 1920. So for them to stay in business, they had to get their license. So they went to architecture school through correspondence, and of course they showed up to take their license, but they were 2 Black men in the Deep South. And so they were denied the opportunity to take their license just because they were Black.
Yeah.
But they didn't stop there. They lobbied the board. They were able to get one of the board members to say to the rest of the board, we should not prevent these 2 men from taking their license exam.
Yeah.
They're probably not going to pass anyway. Well, they took the exam. They passed the first time, and then they had to fight to get their license. But they were able to get license 117 and 118 in the state of Tennessee.
Oh my goodness. They were really pioneers.
And because they were the first Black licensed architects in the country, the board received a lot of notoriety. And then they went to bat for them to get their license in 22 other states.
Wow.
And so it's a very interesting story of the twists and turns of events that took place there. And then the company was passed down to my father, who was the youngest of 6 boys.
Mm.
He also had a architecture and construction business, and he did work throughout the South and Southeast. He went as far as Saudi Arabia.
That's remarkable.
Monrovia, Liberia.
Wow.
So yeah, he got around.
Yeah.
He had a massive stroke in the early 80s, and my mother had to step in and take over the business. You're going to love this story. She had a master's degree in psychology. But we like to say that her psychology degree gave her an insight into the phobias and manias of men who couldn't understand that a woman
I can believe
could run a business.
Right.
If you think about the early 80s, women could not borrow money.
Mm-hmm.
Their sons could, their brothers could, their fathers could, but women were not, able to borrow money until the 1990 when the Women's Business Act was passed by Congress. And so my mother was very innovative in her approach. She had to step in and learn a business that she was not trained for. She literally just knew the telephone number.
Wow.
To the office.
That is something to have to go into everything as a leader.
Right.
Of this generational, multi-generational. Business.
Yes. Yeah. Going from playing bridge to now having business meetings and running a board meeting. Her first board meeting was hilarious. The board meeting was early in the morning, and, I couldn't find her. My other sisters were there. Everybody's sitting around the table. So I go looking for her, and she's in my father's office bathroom. And I open the door. I'm like, what are you doing? And she has a little bottle of Jack Daniels. She's I'm getting fortified.
Oh, my goodness. That is great. That is great. Good for her. Whatever it takes.
And whatever it took is what she did. People would tell her, my father's colleagues from other companies, we feel sorry for you. This company is not going to make it with a woman, as the lead. But she was determined. She said, I have 3 daughters who are architects, engineers, and, I'm going to hold on to see if they want to take this company over.
Fantastic.
And so when I graduated from Howard, undergrad and grad school at Howard in civil engineering, the only place I ever wanted to have a professional career was New York City. And so I came straight here. I got a job at Weilinger Associates engineering firm. And, we did the structural engineering for a lot of the skyscrapers in New York City. But that really was not my interest. So I ended up working for the owner of the company, Paul Weilinger. And Paul was very entrepreneurial. He worked for the Department of Defense. And so we had these contracts to design silos for missiles.
Wow.
We had the contract to design barracks against car bombs because a car bomb,
of course,
had happened back in the 80s. And so it was very interesting work, very interesting. My first 2 weeks, I had to read all about the atomic bomb and what bombs do to societies. And, I'm reading all this. I'm like, Paul, I don't think I really...
Did you know what you were getting into with that? That's a whole other level, right? They might not have taught that at school.
So I decided to direct my interest to computer science and to write programs to design these silos for missiles. But back then, it was the first time we had fax machines. So we would submit our programs at night and come back the next morning to, receive our results on the software that we wrote. So it was a very different time. From there, I went to Turner Construction. Turner is probably the largest construction company in New York City. And, it was great learning ground. I was an estimator there. You learned all aspects of construction in the estimating department. And after 3 years of that, my mother called my boss and told my boss, my daughter's quitting today and she's coming to work for
No.
me.
Are you kidding me? Calls your boss. I've never
Called
even
my
heard of that
boss.
before. Did you know she was going to do that?
No, she called me second.
She called you second. I love that.
You quit today and you're coming to work for me on Monday.
And is that what
You know,
happened?
I thought it was a little aggressive.
That's great, though. That's great, though.
You know, in retrospect, it was great.
Mm.
It was, you know, she knew that I didn't want to go straight into the family business, that I wanted to get experience outside of the business, a company that didn't bear the McKissack brand. And, you know, I had done that now.
Yeah.
Weilinger, Turner, and she needed the help. So I commuted to
that.
Nashville
From New York.
from New York
Mhm.
every week.
Oh, wow.
Monday through Thursday for 2 years. And I learned so much from her around business development and how to forge long-term relationships
I love that.
with not just your clients, but with your staff, how to build quality staff.
Oh, my goodness.
And I have to go back to the psychology.
She was right. I read somewhere that she made the comment, it's taken us more than 100 years to become an overnight success, which I really love that.
She says that all the time.
She must have had such a profound influence, not only in the business, but on you.
Yes.
And when you think about those lessons, you know, what still stays with you today?
Well, I think the relationship is important. You know, understanding the need to build relationships. And, you know, they may go in cycles. But, you know, my professional career now in New York is, since 1985. That's almost 40 years. And, you know, people have come in and out of my life. And so maintaining a good relationship with people is important. I think it was also good to learn from her to define yourself as a woman. You know, we went through periods where women would try and act like men,
Of course.
as opposed to just being a woman.
Yeah.
And she always had a problem with that. She would always say, "Where are your pearls?" You know, and be the female that we've raised you to be. And that will have value at some point. It will have value.
You know, when you think of how she was received as a woman leader in the company and how you're received today, I would imagine that is so different.
Drastic.
You know,
drastic.
Do you look back and do you feel proud of how far people have come, or frustrated too that she didn't get that same respect?
Well, I'm not frustrated. I can say I am more proud of where we've come as a whole, as a nation, globally. Women leaders are in every sector, and it's important. I think it's changed how we do business. I always say we need women to run the world, and we wouldn't have any wars.
I think you're right about that.
We might be headed in that direction.
Well, we would definitely do things differently.
Yes.
So McKissack and McKissack has worked on more than 6,000 projects. That is so unbelievable. And you are in New York, and you've done such big projects in New York. Would love for you to talk to us about some of those big projects, whether that's building a terminal at JFK or the Second Avenue subway. These are things that were in the works and talked about for years, and you worked on them and got them done. I mean, that is so huge. And as a New Yorker, I thank you because I can make use of these things. You know, tell us about some of these projects. What was that like to take them on, and how do you get through something so daunting?
Well, it's progresses over time. And, you know, I always had a strategy as to how we were going to grow our business. And I made sure that I understood our clients very well. I didn't take a shotgun approach. I took more of a very targeted approach to what clients we would pursue. And fortunately, when I started the McKissack Group, which eventually went back and, you know, we bought the original company, my targets were around the minority women-owned business programs that were just starting in New York City. Those probably started in early 90s.
Okay.
And, it's the state, the city of New York, the School Construction Authority. Quite honestly, I looked for the agencies that had the largest budgets.
That's
capital
who's paying,
projects.
Right, exactly. That makes sense.
And then I developed strategic partnerships with other construction firms, especially Turner, where I had worked before.
Right.
And over the years, the people I worked side by side with became leaders. And so, they were making decisions for the company. And so I was able to, forge partnerships with them.
I love that.
And so those partnerships went from being McKissack being a sub-consultant to a joint venture partner to then becoming a prime contractor.
Terrific.
And so, it was a process over years.
Yeah.
And while you're building relationships with strategic partners, you're also building a relationship with the clients and understanding how they operate.
Yeah.
Just getting a permit in New York is crazy.
Really crazy. I can.
Matter of fact, there are companies that make profit,
helping you
business.
Try to do that.
Yeah, just expediters. No other city has expediters. And so understanding the paperwork, Vindex, contractors, in the past in New York have been caught up in unscrupulous types of situations. And so now the city and the state, they do an extensive background checks on contractors. And so the paperwork, certification, we're certified at, maybe 44 different agencies. That's a full-time job for someone in our office.
Getting that done and then making sure the certifications are still good and valid and overseeing them, that's unbelievable.
And submitting taxes and all of that every year and staying up to date on any change that you make in your organization. And so over time, I was able to develop relationships with the clients themselves. And so I can think back to some of the inflection points, the game changers that really propelled McKissack to the next level, like winning Atlantic Yards, where the Barclay Arena.
Yes, in Brooklyn.
Yes. Forest City Radnor, Bruce Radnor, definitely an icon in Brooklyn. Always cared about the community, always knew there was a community commitment and investment that he wanted to participate in. And so, he did the affordable housing. And then when he decided he wanted to build the stadium, he wanted to make sure he involved local businesses in Brooklyn,
terrific.
As well as minority and women-owned businesses. And so through him, I met with his capital, the lead of his capital program, Bob Santa. And I said, Bob, what can I do here? There has to be something. He said, well, we want you to have a prime role. And so I got excited around that. He said, but we've given the arena away. Another company is going to build that. He said, but we've got the rail yard. We've got to move the rail yard and the Carlton Street Bridge to build this arena, and then we'll build a temporary location, then a permanent location. He said, how about I send you some documents on that next week? I'm like, okay.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I write my thank you note. I go on about my business, and next week my receptionist is saying, Cheryl, we received a lot of documents today.
Oh, no.
About 500 pages of size E documents. That's like conference room table length.
Right.
And I'm like, oh my God. But that was the beginning.
That was the beginning.
I didn't, there's a glass ceiling, a glass cliff.
Yes.
I thought this was the cliff.
Cheryl, I'm curious about the next generation too of the family and the business, whether that's children or siblings. Is anyone else involved to the extent that you are? And do you see them taking the reins at some point?
I'm curious too.
Still undecided.
Yes and no. As the fifth generation, I feel a lot of pressure that, I need to make sure this business is sustainable and just what makes sense to make it sustainable. Both of my daughters work in the business, but not necessarily showing that they want to take the leadership role. And I mean, they're still young. I'm hoping young people are going to live to 120, so they have a long runway.
Yeah. Let's hope.
But, in thinking about it, I know in 5 years, my time frame is 2030 when I would like to transition to a lesser role, maybe not completely out of the business, but a lesser role. And so I've been thinking about this for 4 years, the succession of McKissack and McKissack. And right now, my thought is to build a very strong management team. I've been working on that for the last 4 years and just getting it to the place where it can run without me.
So hard.
And then deal with ownership later.
Yes. But business first.
But business first.
I mean, the fact that it's been 5 generations is so remarkable. You are probably in the tiniest bit of businesses that have been able to do that. It is extraordinary.
Well, Sam, I actually know some of the statistics.
Tell me.
Well, 1 out of 5 businesses fail in the first year. 18% make it to the second generation.
So that's a big drop off.
That's a huge drop off, right? And then 4% make it to the third generation.
So probably not very many make it to the fifth.
Very, very small.
That's unbelievable. But that is a ton of pressure. And also you're in a changing world as it is. The construction business, I'm sure, is not the same as when you started it. There's so much more sustainability, competition, things you have to know about this. What are the things that you think about, succession aside, in terms of making sure the business is still strong in the future? What are those top things for you?
I think number one for me is technology. Whatever, we can automate is what we should try and do. Because we're in New York, everything is a specialty. So I don't see robots coming to build our building anytime soon. But, when you get out in, Midwest and, you can build buildings that, are more standardized, then I do see, the 3D printing and all of that coming into play. I think the other issue we have is we really are a big data business, and we haven't figured that out well. So a lot of our platforms don't really interface, and if we could streamline, it would make our business a lot better. I think merging design with construction is another way of the future that we have to be mindful of. That, one day a construction firm like we had back in my ancestors' days could be a design and construction firm where they really are working together as one unit as opposed to separate units.
Right. I understand that. Tell us about some of your favorite projects. What was, 1 or 2 that you just loved what they were trying to be and you really felt like you poured your heart into it?
jpmorgan Chase 270 Park is my favorite.
I'd take that too as a favorite also. Can't wait to get to this building, which is years in the making. And why so?
It is my favorite because what it represents to the construction world and what it represents to Wall Street. For years, we had tried to work at banks, and it just was difficult to break through. And I think it has to do with, more of banks dealing with capital programs the way they normally do, because that's not their line of business.
Right.
They just want to get it built, move on, and, service their clients and make a profit. And, I think the incident of George Floyd began to wake people up in America that, it's important to diversify. And, your leader, Jamie Dimon, was one of the first to do that. And, he started internally, which you would know more than I would.
Many years ago.
But then he wanted to make it reflective through everything that he's doing, and saw the opportunity in construction to open the door. Since JPMorgan Chase has opened the door for us, we have worked at Morgan Stanley.
Fantastic. I'm glad we were the first.
You were the first.
I'm very proud
We
of
just
that.
finished Morgan Stanley's corporate headquarters.
Terrific.
Yours is so big.
Yes.
It's
And
taking
central.
longer.
And what a project, right, over Grand Central Station, to really have to build something, not only put it up carefully, but take the old building down very carefully, which took years too.
Yes, and the building itself, it's built for 100 years. It's 100% electric. I mean, when is the last time we built a building that has the same stature of 270 Park? It could be, the Empire State Building, the Pan Am Building, the
Which will
Chrysler
hopefully
Building.
stand as a beacon for a long time
Yes.
of the innovation.
And so to be a part of that, to build out the trading floors, this will be our first opportunity to build out the trading floors. And isn't that great to give a company that, has 200 years of history,
Yes.
the opportunity to do something new?
Oh, it's tremendous. I mean, so many employees, I think, are looking forward to being there, to working differently, to entertaining clients differently, to make use of the space, more of a public space too, the down street level. It's really, we're very excited. We can't wait for that. But thank you for that.
Yes,
for
and
making that
I'm
a
excited
reality.
about JFK Terminal 1.
Yes.
Again, that was a transformative project like
For sure.
270 Park.
Yeah.
A P3 with the Port Authority, with minority investors, Loop Capital and Magic Johnson with Carlyle. Just innovative, a new way of delivering mega projects that are going to make a huge difference to New York City.
They do. I mean, these are projects that transform the communities around them. Certainly
Yes.
the airport, certainly the subway. How do you think about not only the project in terms of the building that you're trying to create, but the communities too that you're serving and getting them involved and hopefully benefiting?
Well, we have a preference for local firms to work on that project, and the same with the concessions. You'll see plenty of Queens firms involved with the concessions and with the construction, which is great. It's changing that whole community and building capacity of our contractors.
So you spend a lot of time really helping the next generation of architects and engineers. Why is that important to you? And what do you think others can do, like you, to really influence the next generation?
Well, in our industry, we are very concerned about our pipeline. And so we have to reach out and let the younger generation know that they can build wealth here, because that's really what they're concerned about. That this is a viable career. Not everyone in design and construction strap on boots and go out in the mud and
Other jobs.
excavate.
Right.
We have HR professionals, financial professionals, engineers, architects, accounting. I mean, it is a plethora of opportunities in the design and construction industry. And now it's become the number one industry in New York City, because it is an $88 billion industry in 2024. And it just grows every single year. I remember when it was a $10 billion a year.
Yeah, not too long ago.
Not too long ago. And a big project was $500 million.
Wow. That probably seems very quaint to you now, like very charming.
Yes.
I love that. How do you think too about the other roles you play? You're on boards, and so you bring leadership in that capacity as well. Why do that type of activity too, in addition to leading the firm? What do you hope to achieve for yourself and also for others, the companies you work for?
Well, I think it's important to have a platform to advocate for our industry from a different perspective. Typically our industry has been white male dominated. You'd go to events and you'd see 3 or 4 dresses, and everyone else had on a tuxedo.
Suits. Oh, yes.
And, slowly over the years, that has changed. And we advocate a little bit different. Women tend to check in with their coworkers on their mental and physical state a little bit more than the men. And we need that, especially after going through COVID.
That's right.
You have to check in on people and see how they're doing. And as a whole, I think we're putting more effort into doing that. But women have done it naturally. Mm-hmm. And, advocating for, women's rights and fair pay.
Still need to.
Yes, we do that. We go to Washington every year, and we're working with the Secretary of Commerce
that's terrific.
On a campaign to get 1 million women into construction.
Love that.
And so, we look at it differently.
Yeah. No.
And so it's important to have that voice on these boards.
I love that. So maybe at the risk of scaring folks or bringing us back to prior days, I'm wondering some of the challenges that you faced as a female, as a Black woman in this industry. What were those moments where somebody made assumptions about you or challenged you in some way that really were unfair for those reasons?
Well, I don't know where to start with that because it still happens, and I've had so many examples of it.
See, I'm really upset to hear that. I was hoping if I framed it as tell us something in the past, but has it gotten better, I guess is the question. Has it gotten noticeably better?
It has gotten better.
But still not gone?
No, because they're blind spots. People can just have blind spots, and they just don't even realize what they're saying. An example, one of my clients who had never met me before, a CFO of a major agency in New York, had a problem on a project that we were construction managers for. My EVP called me and told me what was happening, and it wasn't major. It was just construction, generators coming 2 or 3 weeks late. It's caught in customs or what have you.
Yeah.
So this lady calls me on my cell phone 7:00 at night, screaming and hollering. You don't know what you're doing. You don't know what your company's doing. You don't know the trouble you're getting us in. And I'm like, excuse me, I'm Cheryl McKissack, president of McKissack & McKissack. How are you tonight?
Yes. Let's start there.
Let's start there. And, I'm not sure you would have called the president of Turner Construction or Skanska or Gilbane and started off this way.
Wow.
And she said, I'm sorry.
Wow. Thought she should have.
And that's, great. Let's pick this up first thing in the morning. Let's do it soon.
Right. And I'm sure you'll find the right answer, but that's not the way you do about it.
People will come to us and want to partner with us and want us to be the lead. So it says McKissack, but then want us to do 10% of the work. And then they'll say, oh, you don't really do the work, do you? We're like, yeah, that's how we're in business.
Right. I mean, the expectations of what you can do.
Yeah. And I have to say that's far and few between, but it still can happen. But most of our partners understand the value that we bring to the table. And that has changed over the last 30 years.
That is incredible. I'm so glad. I'm curious what advice you would give to women in this business, because you said it was very important to you to do that. I did read you had this quote, it starts within. If you can conceive it, you can actually do it. And I really took that away as everyone has that power within them. Find that strength, find that confidence to do it.
Mm-hmm.
What do you like to tell women, especially about that?
Well, around that point in particular, I truly believe we create our own situations because you're making the decision on who you hire, what clients you have, what your strategy is going to be. So we create our issues. We decide if we want to take a risk. We accept a project. We don't know if it's going to be, a positive or negative experience, but we've created it.
That's right.
And so, I always felt like if I created the situation, then I have what it takes to overcome it.
That's great. That really, it's inspiring to know that there's ways out.
There is.
And you have that intrinsically, the skill to handle that. So it's 2030 and you're trying to step back a little bit. And so I'm wondering, what is the legacy you're leaving behind at McKissack and McKissack?
Well, I hope that I have grown the company from where it was before.
Yeah.
I have expanded the brand and created new markets for McKissack. Whether that's development, we've been passive developers in several developments in Philadelphia and in New York now, which is a new avenue for us. And, I would love to say my two daughters.
Yes, they're part of that.
Are a part of that.
Yeah. Cheryl, I'm curious as to your thoughts on Black entrepreneurs in the construction industry. Where do you see them taking root and growing? And where do you see more opportunities?
And you know what? I appreciate this question, Sam, because we definitely need more Black entrepreneurs in the architecture, engineering, and construction sector. Because of that, I started a firm in 2019, right before COVID, called Legacy Engineering with my partner, John Rice. John Rice was a managing partner at a very large mechanical, electrical, plumbing design firm here in New York. And we started this firm with the whole premise of turning it over to young Black, minority, Hispanic, Asian engineers. And so we've been able to bring on, it started with the two of us. We're now up to 17 people.
That's fantastic.
And we brought on our first Hispanic owner.
Great.
Last year. And we are training all of our staff to be owners.
Wow.
And our plan is within the next, I think John is going to exit in 5 years. I plan to exit a couple of years after him and turn this company over to them.
It's fantastic. So really not only teaching entrepreneurship, but imparting the ownership over time.
That's correct.
To these individuals.
Yes.
That's great. Can you see people acting differently as a result of feeling that ownership mindset?
Absolutely. They act like owners. We have ownership meetings. We have trainings around, what it is to be an owner.
Yeah.
Simple stuff that, an owner has made an investment into the company. And so they make an investment, but we pretty much will lend them the money to buy their shares.
Great.
But it's exciting to see them grow, and it's exciting to see them feel vested in their own company. And now we've expanded to Atlanta and pretty soon Nashville and Philadelphia.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, so we want to grow a sizable company for these young engineers.
I love that. Tell me about the importance of entrepreneurship in the construction industry by Black, by other minority individuals. What are you trying to do to really improve that statistic?
Well, I think it's really important that we create as much minority entrepreneurship as possible because the numbers are very low in the city and state of New York. To aid that, I started a company called Legacy Engineers in 2019, with my partner, John Rice. John was a manager of a large mechanical, electrical, plumbing, fire protection firm here in New York City. And he had the same idea that I had.
That's great. That's great.
With the goal of bringing on as many minority engineers as we could, teach them to be owners, and then turn the company over to them.
Wow.
And we are excited that we brought on our first partner last year.
Great. That's great.
And hope to bring on another one this year who's already been identified.
Awesome.
And we've grown to 17 people, expanded to the Atlanta area, Nashville, and Philadelphia.
That's terrific. Tell me about teaching someone the ownership mindset. We talk a lot about that even in our bank, which is, not owned by the employees, but to have an ownership mindset means really to think and act with urgency, like it's your place, like you want to do everything right and no jobs beneath you. What does that mean to you?
I agree with what you just said. I mean, the owner definitely is engaged with clients differently because they're vested in the organization. They, put more into the whole company because they know that they're going to get a return.
Right.
It's not someone, usurping them of their services. They're going to get a return in the future.
Yeah.
And that mindset is very different. And it is a shift. And I loved what you said because it is a mindset. When you're an employee, you're thinking 9 to 5.
Or just thinking things are out of your control sometimes,
Right.
or someone else might do them, but there's an economic incentive and a real pride, I think, that people bring when they have that mindset, and it really shows.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much, Cheryl, for being with us. It is unbelievable to hear about the story of your business and your career, and we just wish you the very best and can't wait to see you at 270 when it opens.
Absolutely. With bells on. I can't wait.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to my conversation with Cheryl McKissack Daniel. It is so inspiring to hear about her family's legacy in the construction business and how she carries on all the lessons and their influences today. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please follow on your favorite podcast app and share with others. I hope today you learned something that will help you lead with purpose.